Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are going to explore the mathematically shocking truth about predicting human history. Have you ever wondered if the rise and fall of entire civilizations, or even just tomorrow's news headlines, are already written out in a code that we just haven't cracked yet? Well, today we're jumping right into the vanguard of predictive science. We're looking at this absolutely wild intersection where complex mathematics, evolutionary biology, and even quantum theory are colliding to literally decode the future of human society.
Here is our quick roadmap for the explainer. First, sci-fi becomes science fact. Then, the math of human chaos, followed by biology's secret rulebook. After that, we hit the prediction paradox, and we'll wrap up in the deep end with quantum society and retrocausality.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, Sci-Fi Becomes Science Fact.
So, decades ago, the brilliant author and chemist Isaac Asimov came up with this incredible vision of the future. He imagined a discipline where the behavior of billions of people could be mapped out statistically, and he called it psychohistory. The whole idea was that, sure, you can't predict what one individual person is going to do today, but the mathematical averages of a massive population, well, those could let you forecast the fate of entire galactic empires, completely bypassing the chaos of central control. It was just a beautiful sci-fi dream. Until, well, it kind of wasn't.
Because today, researchers like Peter Turchin and Yaneer Bar-Yam have essentially taken Asimov's dream and morphed it into actual, rigorous, complex system science and cryodynamics. Okay, we aren't exactly predicting 12,000-year galactic empires quite yet, but we are using structural demographic modeling to predict real-world social breakdowns.
And this slide right here brilliantly illustrates the practical power of this math. Get this. An explicit computational model, published way back in 2010, accurately mapped out the exact sociopolitical instability the U.S. would experience a full decade later, in 2020. The model neutrally analyzed historical data, elite overproduction, economic trends, totally without political bias. It just crunched the numbers and successfully forecast a massive wave of instability years before it ever hit the news cycle. Let's look at another completely staggering example of how interconnected these systems actually are. Complex systems analysis revealed something truly shocking about the Arab Spring. It turns out, U.S. ethanol policies that converted corn to fuel, combined with the 2008 housing crisis pushing investors into commodities, created this massive, unseen spike in global food prices. So those hidden structural pressures, not just pure political ideology, were the actual trigger for the Arab Spring halfway across the planet. Which brings us to Section 2. The math of human chaos, and the physics of social phase transitions. Think about boiling a pot of water on your stove. You don't need to track the exact trajectory of every single water molecule to know when it's going to boil, right? Well, complex system science shows us that we don't need to track every single human being to predict societal boiling points either. The system's behavior is driven by macroscopic variables. For water, it's temperature and pressure. For human society, it's things like food prices and geographic distribution. The real secret to unlocking this lies in a beast of a concept called renormalization group mathematics. By utilizing this highly advanced, slightly obscure physics math, scientists realized that the trick isn't just writing out some infinitely long equation to track every little detail. Instead, it's about identifying the exact variables, basically the steering wheel and the brakes, at different scales of human society. And the practical applications here are absolutely huge. Whether we're predicting the spread of a disease or the outbreak of ethnic violence, focusing neutrally on these geographic control parameters gives us incredible insight. For pandemics, it's all about exponential growth, transportation networks, and discrete isolation. For ethnic violence, models actually show it's often predicted not by ancient historical hatreds, but simply by the geographic distribution and friction points of separated groups interacting in public spaces. If we identify the variables, we actually have the power to engineer solutions, rather than just helplessly watching history happen. All right, moving on to Section 3, Biology's Secret Rulebook. Let's see how history mutates. In biology, we normally think genetic mutations are entirely random, right? Like rolling a pair of dice. But they are actually channeled by existing regulatory networks. This is a concept known as developmental bias. It essentially means that an organism's underlying physical structure makes some mutations much more likely to happen than others. Just take a look at this paper by Erler and his colleagues. It demonstrates that developmental bias is very likely the default condition in biology. This means nature has a hidden structural rulebook for how things mutate and grow.
Evolution is not just rolling dice, it's rolling dice on a severely tilted table. Now, when we pair this biological concept with human history, this is the unorthodox pairing I love, the revelation is absolutely shocking. Societal mutations, our revolutions, our big cultural shifts, our technological leaps are restricted by a remarkably similar structural rulebook. History isn't just a random string of chaotic events. It is constrained and guided by the structural network of our past, which makes some futures highly probable and others basically structurally impossible. This naturally brings us to Section 4, the prediction paradox. I want you to think about this question. If we successfully predict a societal crisis, do we accidentally cause it? Asimov actually called this the psychohistory paradox. Imagine a model predicts the stock market will crash on Tuesday, so everyone panics and sells on Monday. Well, the prediction itself just caused the crash. Today, in machine learning and social science, this is widely known as the pervasive issue of performativity.
Notice the wild contrast here on this table. On one hand, you have self-fulfilling predictions. That's like when an algorithm predicts you're going to like a video, puts it right in front of you, and practically guarantees that you click it. But on the flip side, you have self-negating predictions. A traffic app predicts a massive jam on your commute, routes everyone away from it, and suddenly the jam never even happens. The prediction completely negated itself.
So, the takeaway is that any significant social prediction has some performative power. It fundamentally shapes the target it's trying to measure by actively steering the human network. We aren't just safely observing society through a one-way mirror anymore. The very act of predicting changes the fabric of what we are trying to predict. And finally, we are going to take this down the deepest rabbit hole possible in Section 5, Quantum Society and Retrocausality. If human free will and our decision-making processes happen to be fundamentally quantum phenomena, which some physicists argue they are, we have to at least consider retrocausality. This is the totally mind-bending idea that the future can actually reach back to influence the present. Now, keeping things strictly scientifically objective here, this is a fiercely debated frontier. Back in 2011, a psychologist named Daryl Bem published a massive study. He claimed to prove that participants could subconsciously feel the future, displaying genuine precognitive abilities. It absolutely shocked the scientific community. However, it's crucial to note that massive scientific replication efforts subsequently failed to find any evidence of this whatsoever, heavily suggesting it was just a statistical artifact. The whole phenomenon remains highly controversial, but it highlights this amazing debate between the standard macroscopic era of time and the bizarre mathematical possibilities of quantum mechanics. And yet, despite the controversy, theoretical physics still entertains mathematical models that do not strictly respect a one-way arrow of time. As you can see in this quote, in the quantum realm, the mathematics of the future can sometimes echo backwards. Which leaves us with a final, very provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. As we start to master the math of predicting human history, from uncovering the hidden control variables of the Arab Spring to mapping the structural rules of societal evolution, are we merely observing the future from afar? Or, through the sheer performative power of our own predictions, are we actively pulling that future into reality? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious, and I will see you in the next explainer.